So don't set but
Yeah, it's all gone horribly wrong. Good start, guys. Well done. However, my computer is having issues. It appears to be mostly clogged full of sand, which is a good start. However, guys, welcome to a very special edition of Run Hot or Die, episode 2.5, as it will be hereforth known as. And specifically, we're going to answer a couple of questions or look at a couple of queries that have come up after the recent NGNG podcast and obviously Russ's appearance on it. Now, guys, obviously this has caused a bit of a storm, and for anyone who doesn't know, specifically the issue has been third-person view and Mechwarrior online. And it's a pretty contentious issue. There's been quite a few threads put up on the forums, so we just thought we're going to try and address that today with our key panelists. Hello, key panelists. As always, we have the eminent John Clavel from the Wolf Spiders, and we have Glory and the Magician from Steel Jaguars, and of course myself. Hey guys, how are you?
very good.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so guys, bit of a contentious issue. We've had Russ obviously on a podcast talking about third-person view with Mechwarrior Online. Now, it's something that's been spoken about in the past. It's something they said they wouldn't do. What are your feelings on it? Any feelings?
I'll start. Well, I mean, third-person view is fine if people want to play that way. The main problem I have with it is that this community isn't that big yet as it is, and I worry it's just going to divide it up. Back in Mechwarrior 4, you had your first-person players, and you had your third-person players, and then you had some people who, like myself, who would do both. On the latter leagues, it was mostly played under third-person. I don't know why, just that's how it happened to fall. I'm a little worried that the competitive side will move to third-person again, and that'll... One, it'll just split the competitive community, and two, I don't want to play third person, but if that's where the competition's going to be, that's how I'm going to have to play. So I'd rather just them to keep it out of the game. It just doesn't have the same feel. You know, people talk about how it has it's similar to the sim idea of Mechwarrior, because in Mechwarrior you have this 360 radar condensed to 160 field vision, but there's a big difference between sitting in your cockpit, which is the thing that they said that was a big issue for them. They wanted people to feel like they're really piloting a mech and inside their mech, and having an over-the-shoulder type cam. And it's just, there's no reason to do it except they feel that the base core community they have isn't enough to make them enough money, so they feel like they need to expand to other people.
I mean,
I guess I'll go next. Sorry, go ahead, Rance.
I was just going to say, you know, it's an interesting point. Do they really not have enough money coming in from the core community? Myself and JC discussed this on the last podcast, the success of the Founders Pack and the money that's been coming in with the MC.
Millions.
Millions.
Well, Russ said that he wants hundreds of thousands more players, so...
Well, as you can see from the poll that, I don't know who it was, started it, the vast majority of forum goers who have seen that thread, like, the vast majority is an understatement. Nobody wants third person. Nobody currently playing this game wants third person. And they can't ignore that poll.
I mean, I actually have the stats from that poll in front of me here. Last time I checked, 2,180 people have voted on a poll. Now, for a poll in a game forum, that's quite a lot of people. The current stats are, yes, 103 people. No, 1,990 people. That's a staggering 91.28%. And then another 4%, almost as many people who actually said yes, said they had no opinion on it. I mean, is that really a vindication from the community that we don't want to see that? Or is this just the typical vocal minority stamping their feet because they want to be heard?
No, we never have that many people vote on anything on those forums. The polls get maybe 250 people at most. We never break 1,000 on those polls. This is a big, big deal.
JC, what do you think about it?
I think that, obviously, I mean, to quote what Russ said, 1% of the forum is about loudmouth people, apparently. So, and they're the people that make all the noise. So, I mean, I would be worried that I think it is a strong showing in the poll. I think it's pretty indicative. I mean, I know that there's 2 people on the official feedback thread, myself and another WSB member posted, giving their views on it and saying no, basically. But, I mean, on the private Wolf Spider forums, I mean, pretty much everybody in my whole unit is basically going apeshit about it. You know, they don't want it. So whether they voted or not, I don't know. But certainly it's indicative of the wider core community anyway. Most of the founders are going to probably be against it. Certainly all the Battletech hardcore fans. And then a lot of the old Planetary League players as well, because we would have only played first person. Yeah, I think it's a good indicator of what the community wants.
But is that really the point? I mean, again, the whole point that Russ said he's looking at this is because it's not just about that core community. They want to bring new players in. They want to entice people who perhaps wouldn't look at this game initially to be more involved with it, and hopefully that's going to give them a larger draft of players.
Sure, but it would be really, really foolish of them to alienate the community they already have.
Fair point, fair point.
Yeah, but I think they know that we're not going anywhere. I mean, this is our only Mechwarrior game to play, and they know that. So they could appease that a little bit. I mean, they got their core fans there playing, paying them. Now they want to try to find other people. However, you start doing the over-the-shoulder cam, and I don't know if you're going to get that many more people. I don't think it's going to be that attractive to people to say, hey, that game, that looks pretty cool over the shoulder. I think they're going to, I mean, yeah, you get to see the back of your mech. Great, you know, it's like an MWO then, but, or Hawken, or Rain of Thunder, or something like that. And it just, what would draw people to you as opposed to Hawken is that it's more of a sim. And it's got this larger universe that you take part of, and I just don't see them pulling in that many more people by going to an over-the-shoulder cam.
I think that PGI should be working, you know, and maybe even taking the third-person perspective. I mean, I think having the ability to use it, I mean, you could certainly take that and use that for, say, if you were like looking at matches and stuff from an esport perspective. I don't know what options they have viewing mechs and stuff in matches, but so I don't think that it's necessarily a waste of time. Maybe it should have been, you know, down the road and not so soon. But obviously they feel it needs to be prioritised because they want. Well, I mean, Russ says in the NGNG podcast that a lot of new people coming in, trying the game, are struggling with the whole torso turning and then turning your legs. I mean, look, when I first started playing Mechwarrior 4, I never played Mechwarrior, and yeah, it took me a good while to pick it up. It can be difficult. I remember running around and having to not torso turn and just run around and look in one direction. And when I picked it up, you know, that's it. It's like riding a bike. You're not going to forget it. You just... But, you know, maybe they can use it as a way to have a trial system, you know, and bring people into the game and, you know, teach them how to use it. But I think ultimately the first-person perspective is where it's at, and I think that's what the majority of people want. And like the magician said earlier, like, it's going to split the community because you're just going to have a bunch of people playing third-person, and then you're going to have a bunch of people playing first person. But unlike when we were playing Mechwarrior 4, where everyone just could sit on their own server and you had these own little microchasms, now we're one persistent game. So how do you make that work? You know, if we're all playing the metagame and some people are, you're going to have a line drawn between who's playing. So what happens if the third person community becomes where the money's at, the bigger community? Then what? The first person community gets shunned to the side? I think PGI have kind of come out with this, and I think maybe now that they need to sort of, if they want to progress with it, they need to sort of put their plans on the table, kind of to tell people what they're going to use it for, how they're going to use it.
I think one of the points there is obviously that you mentioned people having trouble getting used to this idea of mecha simulation, you know, and it's slightly different from first-person shooters and things like that. And granted, you know, that's absolutely a fair point. There are difficulties when you're first learning how to pilot your mech, but surely there are better ways to do it rather than, in essence, dumbing down the game.
Just take a cue from Hawken. They have it just right. They know that people aren't going to know how to play the game when they start, so they have basically a 10-minute tutorial that tells you how to move your mech, how to jump, how to sidestep, all the basic movements of Hawken. You can load up the game and in 10 minutes learn how to drive the thing. Why don't we have that in Mechwarrior Online? Why, if the main reason is that people can't orient themselves in the game, why spend so much time coding third person when you could put a simple tutorial in that people have been asking for since the beginning of closed beta?
Yeah. I'm just going to read out a couple of the other things, oppositions in the official thread, you know, and you can add your point of views to these. Basically, a lot of the criticism is it doesn't really add anything to the game. It creates balance issues, obviously, because of the advantages third person creates. It breaks the immersion, because it is fundamentally a mecha simulating game. And really, I suppose one of the main points that has been brought up over and over again is, why are you suddenly looking at third-person view? And like you say, taking the time to code all that, when there are already bigger issues that need to be dealt with.
Well, I think that third-person view would be really relatively easy for them to implement, I think. I mean, you just all they have to do is set the camera to position, redo the HUD, and provide that as an option. It probably wouldn't take them that much time to do. What I don't get is where it's coming from. I mean, he talks about, oh, at the trade shows, they can't figure it out. Well, you know what? At trade shows, you're running into people who may or may not game a lot, and who sit down for 5 minutes to play a game. As Glory said, if you add a little tutorial, people figure it out. Now, one thing that Russ did say is that maybe, I'm not really sure if this is exactly what he was saying, but it sounded like he was saying that you might have third person as an option for a while, but then maybe in the actual community warfare aspect, that would all be first person. Yet, there are also talk about having an option, which one you would, like, you know, if you wanted to only play in first person, you could play in those games. If you want to play third person, you could play in those. So I'm not sure if he was saying for community warfare it's only going to be first person or not, or if you're only going to have so much time as third person to get used to how it plays. But I think that's a pretty bad idea. You don't want to have somebody learn how to play a game in a certain way and then say, oh, you can't play that way anymore. So, who knows?
I mean, to my mind, it seems to have been very much a knee-jerk reaction, and I mean, that obviously makes it sound like it was a snap decision. Obviously, they've been mulling this idea over for some time, but it seems very much like they haven't thought about it in any great deal of depth beyond, we need to introduce new players how to create this game. And I think it's going to create a lot of negative externalities when they try and actually implement this.
I wonder if it's something more coming from IGP. You know, like, is this something that's going to be driven by, you know, wanting to push concurrent users up? I mean, I don't know. They're not going to release that kind of information, so I don't know what the real reasons are. I guess we'll never really know. But I think, you know, certainly, let's just kind of go back to what Glory and the Magician said. You know, really just a simple tutorial would probably suffice. You know, and they said that they wanted to work on that, which is obviously going to take more time than just putting a third person in. But ultimately, it would be more rewarding to new players.
I think so. I think tutorial is probably the way that they should start looking. Again, look at many successful free-to-play games, League of Legends being one of them. I know I always refer to League of Legends, but that is pretty much my apex of free-to-play games. It's a very hard game to learn. If you've never played a MOBA before, It's unlike anything else you've probably played previously. You know, and if you're not familiar with the concept, it's a hard thing to learn. They have a single-player tutorial mission for you to get started in, and they have bots for you to play against if you want to learn how to play the game. Do you think that's a route? Do you think bots is an option? Do you think a short single-player mission, something akin to maybe the Mechwarrior 2 opening missions, is the way ahead?
As long as there's a hard-ass drill sergeant calling me names, then I certainly think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just part of Mechwarrior. I'm trying to remember Mechwarrior 4 now, Mechwarrior 3, but I know with Mechwarrior 2, you start off and you're not, you know, you're not in charge of your lance at that point, or your star. You're just another Mechwarrior, and you're told, go from this nav point to that nav point, shoot these targets. And they can easily implement just something that you, as soon as you get in, it's like, here's how you move forward, here's how you go reverse, here's how you move your torso, here's how you shoot. Now go through these different nav points and shoot the targets to your left while you're moving to the right. You know, you have to go through gates and stuff. Things that would be, just get somebody used to how you move in the game. But to be honest, I don't think it's an issue. I mean, you look at anybody who plays the game, nobody's asking during games like, how do I move? I can't figure this out. No one's even saying that. Everyone is probably a fairly capable pilot after about an hour and a half or 2 hours of playing the game. It's just not that difficult for people to get their heads around if they've actually played games before. So many games are using that feature, even if it's an over-the-shoulder cam type thing, but a lot of first-person shooters, like tactical shooters, use the ability to run in one direction and aim in the other direction. So it's not that new to experienced gamers.
No, I think that's probably a good point. Sorry, carry on, JC.
Yeah, I mean, Paul made a post in July of this year, and I mean, to sort of take an extract from that and quote him, I mean, he says, being the pilot is one of our key design pillars, and third person breaks that pillar on multiple levels. So where does this, you know, third person is now, we need third person because players are struggling to pick the game up? I mean, that seems to just be a total U-turn on what their original game design was. I mean, he does go on to say that there might be third-person options in the distant future, but this was made 4 months ago.
It does seem a fairly rapid turnaround on what their previous stance has been. You know, but this has, to an extent, been what PGI has been. You know, they said they're going to do one thing, and then suddenly something else has come up. You know, the issue with various things planned, the timelines that they're going to put out. Can they really be held accountable for that? Or is this just part of the dynamic process of making a online game?
Well, I think when the lead designer of the game goes on record and says, you know, pretty much makes a blunt statement about first person in terms of being a pillar of their game design, and then 4 months later, you've got Russ saying, we need third person because players can't play the game. I mean, that just seems like it's an external... There's something going on there that doesn't add up. Like, why have you got the lead designer saying this, and then suddenly 4 months later? So what is driving this U-turn? Because, again, I don't feel that they really need third person, you know, to sell the game and get people in the game, the casual gamers. And I mean, maybe they feel like they need to appeal to people coming from, or attract people coming from other free-to-play games like World of Tanks. I mean, Russ does use World of Tanks as an example quite a lot, and he talks about, you know, being very accessible and coming in. And maybe people are being turned off by the first person. I don't know. I mean, only PGI is going to know that because they've got the statistics. But I mean, I think that we're seeing generally a resurgence in people wanting harder, more difficult games. So why dumb it down now? Why? I think there's an appetite for you know, making games tougher, and why dumb it down? Why go the mech assault route?
There seems to be a lot of concern right now about the game being too hard. Like, you're hearing it from the devs, you're hearing it in the community, just little murmurs of it's too hard to learn, the learning curve's too steep. And I don't really see how that's true, because if you spend, like Magician said, an hour, 2 hours in the game, you pretty much figure out how to do everything. So I'm not sure if this is like an attempt to attract more action gamers, attract more FPS gamers, because, I mean, maybe they're seeing the success of other free-to-play action games and want to get a piece of that. But, I mean, the Mechwarrior community has all... This franchise has always had a steeper learning curve than other games. And most of us who are fans of it really like that about it. So, I mean, even Mechwarrior 4 became too, quote, easy for a lot of the harder core fans. So we really don't want to see this get dumbed down to Mech Assault, like you said. I mean, we've already got games coming out that are like it.
I mean, is it really fair to say that there's a bigger draw from casual gamers? Like, again, I use the example of League of Legends, or to vary it, look at StarCraft 2. Now, both of those games are pretty hard, particularly League of Legends is very, very difficult game to get into and really play your character well. It takes learning a particular champion that you select. And then, if you haven't purchased that champion, when the week's rotation has gone through, you lose access to that champion and you have to learn a brand new champion. It's the same with StarCraft. You have to learn many elements of that game through very layers. You have to know how to micromanage your units. You have to know the macro economy to play those games very well. Again, StarCraft 2 with that learning on layers. So let's look at the popularity of both those games. League of Legends is possibly the biggest free-to-play game, and it's balls hard. Like, just solid. So is there really a justifiable reason to dumb down MWO, if indeed you call third person a dumbing down? Is there really a justifiable reason to do that in the attempt to draw more players? Or, if they stick at it, put a decent tutorial in, will they reach League of Legends, StarCraft 2 success?
One thing about League of Legends and the rotating heroes, or champions, or whatever they are, 'cause I don't really play it, but all the champions are, within reason, pretty good. You know what people have when they start this game is the fucking trial mechs, and who can we can't even use those and succeed, really.
So wherein lies the solution? I know, obviously trial mechs is an issue and it's something that's talked about on the forums a lot. Where's the solution with trial mechs? How do you revolutionise that system?
I think it's pretty easy. I think you go in and you have like a 5-game little mini tutorial thing that you're going through. You play a few games only against people who it's in their first few games, so you're getting used to playing other people. They're not the standard stock mechs, they're actually just custom mechs that are trial mechs that you use. And then when you're done with those 5 games, you enter into like the main pool. Other games do that too. You're in a different pool in your first few games. You're not really a full player yet. And then you're basically commissioned as a Mechwarrior, and you get your first purchasable mech, which is a good, like maybe, it could be anything. It could be a Centurion with a couple medium lasers and AC-20, something like that. Now you have a mech, and you can start making more of a career as that and building off from there. But at least then, right away, when you're playing against all the other experienced players who have a mech that is workable. It's not just something that has 9 medium lasers on it with 12 heat sinks on it. Whereas you run into another player with 9 medium lasers and 18 double heat sinks. Well, I don't care how good you are, you're going to lose almost every single time against that opponent. So if they want to make this game easier for new players to come into, they need to have either a system where people can build up and get mechs faster, and reasonable mechs faster, or they need to completely just throw out how they're doing their trial mechs and make custom trial mechs that are good and workable. Maybe they can look at their stats and see what are the most popular mechs people are playing. Let's put those as trial mechs. Let's rotate those through.
I think, and again, you've touched on another serious point there, the balance between the mechs. One of the statements that Russ did make during the NGNG podcast was that all the mechs are balanced, in his opinion. and therefore, theoretically, it shouldn't matter if you're taking a trial mech or you're taking something else. You should equally, provided you are learning how to play that mech appropriately in its appropriate role, you shouldn't have a problem. Do you think that's fair?
I don't. I mean, okay, so let's look at how the trial mechs are made. They're stock mechs from tabletop. As they're proud to say, this isn't tabletop. There's double armor in this game, which means all your heat is thrown off and all your ammo is thrown off. So as soon as you introduce that, these mechs no longer work. 9 lasers on a stock hunchback, whatever it is, doesn't work because you're using a different heat system. You're using a different armor system. In tabletop, you would never fire all 9 of those, but you might fire 5 of those. And you hit your opponent, you did some serious damage to them. Right now you hit the guy with 5 medium lasers, and you might turn them yellow, maybe orange if you're lucky on them, or if you got a rear armor shot. So it just doesn't work. Take the catapult stock. You can't even kill somebody with that thing before you're out of ammo. So you can't say that the stock trial mechs are balanced. Now, all the chassis might be at least reasonably balanced. They're not, but they might all be reasonably balanced, but the trial mechs are definitely not.
Yeah, we're back to the same situation as we were within Mechwarrior 4, where basically if you were taking a stock mech, it was absolutely worthless. Because the min-max system within the Mechwarrior 4 was so insane that the stock mech was so underpowered. I think there's, they're not as bad. It's not as bad in Mechwarrior Online, but certainly I feel that you're at a disadvantage because, and more so, because you're not getting anything out of it. You can't earn any XP, so it's just making the whole progression harder. I think it would have been better if you have a little, if you come into the game, you go through this little tutorial, and then you just get a mech, or an urban mech or something, whatever.
Start with the fleet. Start out in the fleet and build from there.
That's right.
Well, they said since the beginning they wanted to avoid the arms race to the top, but that's completely what it is right now.
Let's throw that question open. Is it an arms race at the minute? Are people racing for the Atlas so that they can drop as many Atlases as they can? Or do you think there is balance between the mechs, that it's reasonable for any team to take any sort of chassis? Let's try and remove some of the customization and optimization out. Do you think that's fair that a team of Atlases isn't going to stomp a team of, say, medium mechs, for example?
Well, first of all, the matchmaker means that if you take 8 Atlases, you're going up against 8 assault mechs. So obviously, we're not going to see people roll stomping. But certainly, when you look at maybe not so much mediums, but definitely lights, you've got a bunch of assault mechs. The way things are with obviously the net code and the hitboxes and all that stuff of magic, but I think there is a good balance between, maybe better than there was in the past, but it's not perfect. Certainly there is a sense of an arms race, maybe not on the same scale of going to just in assault, because you can definitely, if you're a good light pilot, you can definitely take on an assault. If you're a good medium, you can definitely take on an assault. I think some people were talking about this earlier. If you just watch people in game, most people aren't very good. A lot of people are. I've seen a team of commandos recently, and they were standing still on the cap, and somebody just came along and just popped them all. It's like, what? So, people need to. I think you've got that case of people coming into the game. They need to have a better new player experience. But again, maybe there's some similarities with Eve again. And I know I mentioned this in the previous podcast, where you need people to come into units. You need to have guys feeding into units, or maybe when they've got the meta game. But do it so that players can learn from other players, because that's the best way to learn. not, you know, a tutorial is all great, but really the best way to learn is somebody joins a unit and then all those people who are good pilots go, look, forget everything you've been doing. This is how it goes, and then you learn and you get better.
Yeah, they could also do what Eve had, which was nice, have a beginner's chat, and then have moderators sitting in the chat answering questions. That makes it pretty good. I mean, they don't even have that in there. So a new player comes on, they're like, what do I do?
What about
they don't know. There's no one to answer questions for them because there's no just general chat or something like that. At least even World of Tanks had a nice little general chat when you came on. And if you had questions, you might get a response. But other games all have that. And I don't know why they can't just implement that. It should be really simple to do again.
In Team Fortress 2, they've got the where you can request to have somebody come and tutor you. I mean, that could be something that could work pretty well. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there'd be a large portion of the community quite happy to teach new people. Because, I mean, it's in our interest that these people get better at the game. Because, I mean, if they're going into match after match and they're just getting mowed over, then it's frustrating for them. We want these people to stay. Like, I don't just want to, you know, roll over people all the time and get them to QQ on the forums and then they quit. You know, I want people to improve. I want to be playing against good people, not 5 guys in a commando getting popped one after the other. You know, that's not a challenge. It's not fun. We want people to come into the game, and I know that a lot of the competitive players want to see these guys coming up through the ranks and feeding into teams, starting new teams and being competitive. It's in everyone's interest that, you know, that we help. So have some of these features. I mean, I'd be quite happy to get involved in that.
I think certainly we've seen the success with that to an extent with the beta TeamSpeak server. You know, the problem is that it's a beta TeamSpeak server. It's nothing official in the game. I don't believe that half the new players, if even that many, are even aware of it. You know, so do you think that's something perhaps that should be prioritised?
We do need to give players better access to immediate community. I mean, it's true, you get in the game, and if you don't already know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. And that's another thing about the majority of players aren't ever going to run across at things like C3, but that also brings up the tutorial videos that NGNG is doing. How many new players are actually going to click and watch those videos? Wouldn't they rather have something that's interactive?
I clicked on them. I'm better now.
Behave.
If you really want to learn how to play, go on and watch somebody playing on Twitch. Don't watch a tutorial video, which, I mean, they're okay, but yeah, I'm not going to click. I mean, if I was a new player, I might go click on them after a little while, but that's if I could find them easily. I mean, the site's not that intuitive to find anything you want. I just, you know, if they're going to implement third person, fine, do it. I don't give a fuck. But the community is going to split. There's going to be a lot of bad things that are going to happen. That it's not going to be as tight and close as the community was starting to get in the competitive community, where everyone's playing the same mode. Running the RunHotorDie League, I can already imagine as soon as that option in, I'm going to get tons of PMs and emails saying, can we do this third person? Let's do this third person. I'm going to be like, I'm sorry, don't fucking leave. I mean, I'm not, RunHotorDie is not going third person. I refuse, okay? So you can do your own league. I'll play it too. So I just don't, I'm a third person primary player. That's what I prefer. If I wanted to play, I mean, a first person, I don't even know what I'm saying right now. If I wanted to play third person, I mean, in a game, I'd look at a different game. I mean, this is the only reason I played at Mechwarrior 4 is because you had 24/7 ladder league competition. It's the only reason I played it. So I used it to help train for the planetary league style play. I'm not, and yeah, in the end there was a lot of really good players there. It was pretty heavy and intense and fun competition. But the best times, best memories I have are all playing first person. And I hope that they do third person, they end up making it not just an option that you can click on, but I hope it's just something that I just hope it doesn't completely divide the community. And I think that with community warfare aspect, or some part of that, they need to make sure that that's only first person. Or else, look at now, I mean, you see the same players all the time. And I don't understand how if you half the people are going third person, half the people are going first person, and we're trying to do matchmaking, how that's going to work for group play. If you divide up group play, I mean, maybe they'll think it's going to bring in double the number of players, but it won't for a long time. And people are going to be sitting there in long queues, I think, if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's certainly an issue. From my point of view, I am against third person. I'll say outright, I'm not a fan of third person. I don't think it really belongs. As the Magician pointed out, there are plenty of other games where if you want to play a third-person game, it's out there. You've got Hawken, you've got Firefall, you've got a whole host of games that use third-person. Let's keep MWO something unique, something immersive, where it actually stands apart from the rest of the community in this sort of first-person mecha sim, whatever the hell you really want to call this. Let's have it set out, and when people want to challenge, or want to be challenged, want to really be a good pilot, then they're going to start looking at MWO, because it's the hardest to master. And something, personally, I feel, is that if a game is hard to master, it draws people into it, because people have this instant, I want to master that because it is difficult. Whereas you get throwaway games, which are, it's all dead easy, very good, and it's fun to jump on for 5-10 minutes and whatever, blast your friends, whatever else, but it's short-lived. And are really people going to sink a great deal of money into that?
Well, I mean, first of all, look at the Founders Program. I mean, that is PGI's core audience. And Russ says that it's a very small number, and I think that maybe they're worried they can't break out of that. But again, they made this game for us. But I mean, look how much money they've made from such a small portion of, I don't know what the numbers are, but you're talking 300 to 500,000 people. New players that are coming in like that. If you're going to do third person, it has to have a reason. It has to actually do something for them. It has to bring these people in for the long term. And according to, PGI's own design pillar, long-term core part of the game is first person. So they need to have a way to feed these people in. Now, again, we don't know if that's what they're talking about or whether it's something they're thinking about long-term, because Russ doesn't go into detail. It could be taken either which way. So I think they need to come out and, this has been dropped. The community is going apeshit about it. They need to just say, look, this is what we see happening for third person. And then the community can decide, with their pockets.
Glory, what's your feelings on it? Final thoughts on third person?
My final thoughts on third person. Well, I'm a first person player. That's all I played in Mechwarrior 4. I mean, I did a little bit of third person, but I didn't really enjoy it because it was all, hiding behind a hill and just barely shooting over the tip of it. And, I could do it, but I didn't want to, so I didn't. But the only place I can see third person in Mechwarrior Online is as a spectator view. That's its only good use. There's no reason to be driving your mech from over its shoulder. And it takes away from the spirit of the game they've developed so far. And yeah, we do need a spectator view, and we do need a third-person spectator view, but we don't need to be driving in third person.
No, I think, spectator view, esports, it's important, certainly. And again, we discussed the last podcast the importance of a decent spectator view. But really, for gameplay, is it necessary? I think we're probably all fairly agreed that it's probably not necessary. It's not really adding anything. Now, I'm just going to move... Sorry, JC, were you going to add something there?
No. Maybe I was just dribbling or something. I'm here now, but... I mean, I only played first person. I never played any third person ladder leagues or anything when I played MBT. So when I played Mechwarrior 4, and I'm not... while I'm happy if there's going to be a checkbox and, I'm going to avoid third person, I have no interest in it, I'm only interested in first person. So if they want to have a third person community, I'm not going to partake in it. So whatever, I'm used to that from Mechwarrior 4, that divide. But I think that very divide in itself is negative for MWO, and I think they should avoid it.
Okay, I just want to touch very quickly. This is obviously a short episode tonight, but I just want to touch very quickly on one thing Russ did mention, and I know JC is quite keen on it. The potential of MWO as an esport. JC, could you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess everything from that podcast is drowned in the tears of people crying about third person. And Russ actually did come out and say something which I thought was pretty special, because previously there hasn't been much official communication about esports or an esport future for MWO. And this is, as far as I know, this is the first time we've got the top man coming out and saying, that himself and a bunch of other guys in PGI think that there's a real possibility for a very strong future for the game in esports. Now, I think that is a really nice thing to say. I think that, a lot of us have been really wanting to see that kind of language from the top. There are a couple of people in PGI who kind of have mumbled esports, but it's never come from the high ups. And I'm just, really excited to see Russ seeing the potential in that, and hopefully, and he does say that it's a long-term thing, and I can totally appreciate that, because there's a hell of a lot of stuff to get done. But just to see them acknowledging that this game could be really strong in the esport community, and again, I think it could. I think this version of Mechwarrior has the best opportunity that out of any of them in the franchise, and I'm just excited to see that acknowledgement.
It is good to hear that they're actually looking at it now. I mean, the competitive community has been pushing them for months on this subject without a whole lot of feedback, but I mean, a lot of units have not given up on pressuring on this subject, and it's good to finally hear some feedback about it.
Yeah, it's nice. I gotta be honest, okay? The rate that PGI pushes out any content is so damn slow. And to have anything that's really supporting esports and all that, the quicker it comes, the better. But they have so many things they need to finish that are the main parts of this game that they haven't done yet. And until they do that, I mean, I just don't really expect it. So, are they going to push this out around the time of Client Invasion now? So that means we're probably not going to see these features for another 9, 10, 12 months, if that. I'm being a pessimist, but I think I'm being a bit of a realist too. And it's okay, if the game takes 2 years of development to have the features to do esports stuff, that's not that bad. I mean, this game should be able to easily last competitive play 7 years if they continually push out new mechs, new maps, new mission types, new, I don't know, everything. There's no reason this game can't last even longer with new additions, engine upgrades. I mean, World of Tanks, for example, I don't know how old that game is, but it's got to be like 3 or 4 years already. And they've issued out 2 different engine upgrades. So there's no reason MWO is going to be held back in being able to last as long as they actually deliver on content. But at the same time, World Tanks took a long time, so they had much support for organized competitive play. And if this game does it, it's going to take time. Fine, it's going to take time. Just make sure you guys get it right.
JT, any further thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, yeah, I totally agree with what the Magician's saying. I mean, there's just so much stuff that has to be done first. I mean, fix the goddamn netcode! But I think that obviously, yeah, we're not going to see this for a long time. And you know what? It's okay, because I want them to do it right. I don't want them to rush some, POS out and it's just rubbish. Take your time, PGI. But what I think is important is just seeing that first step, seeing Russ, just even say it is, a step forward in the right direction for this game. And until, you know, and up until now, we haven't really seen any interest, certainly, you know, vocally coming out to the community that there was really an interest in taking the game forward or an esport kind of vision. So I'm just pleased to see them acknowledging that. But, you know, now, you know, take as long as they need to get it right.
I think very much, yeah, it has to be done right. They have to have the right tools. You know, again, we said before, games like World of Warcraft tried to rush their PvP into an esports thing, and they didn't have the tools for it, and that's why it got withdrawn from Major League Gaming. You know, so it has to be done right. League of Legends, it's only now, I believe this is its first year, but it's been entered in as a MLG game with serious tournaments and serious teams. You know, so as long as the game has that content, as long as it has that drive, it's got the time for it to be done right. It's done properly. But I think as JC said, it's very significant that they've actually started to acknowledge its potential. Because before, when they hadn't really acknowledged it, they very much looked towards the whole community warfare thing as their primary drive, or that's how it appeared to be. They weren't going to develop those tools. They weren't going to think. And I think, in a large part, it's a great deal down to the community, the competitive community, teams like Wolf Spiders, teams like Chaos Legion, teams like SJR, pushing and pushing and pushing, and creating our own tournaments that has hopefully raised awareness within PGI and made them realise the potential.
Yeah, I mean, I see realistically, I mean, I would see an esports scene developing around the game. You're talking about like maybe two or 3 years if you were looking to maybe see it getting to something like Major League Gaming. I mean, you're talking years here, but that's okay because, you know, most of the competitive teams are here for the long haul. I mean, unless the game just crashes and burns or, you know, third-person puppies or something, I don't know. But, yeah, you know, ultimately, the competitive players here are going to be the most hardcore, the people that are going to just stick around as long as the game is about. Because, you know, we're here for Mechwarrior. I mean, we fucking love Mechwarrior. But yeah, it's a long-term thing, and again, you know, it's down to these competitive teams, and there's a lot out there for us to keep pushing that agenda to make sure that, you know, we're reminding the developers, look, we're here, we want to see this game develop towards an esport future.
Absolutely. Right, guys, I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking the time out for this, I almost want to say, emergency broadcast of Run Hot or Die, to try and address some of the issues there. Just very quickly around the table, any final thoughts before we close out?
My beer was tasty.
The dragon sucks, Russ. It sucks. It's terrible, okay? It's terrible. Pilot a K2 Gaussapult. You'll love it.
Needs more pulse lasers.
Guys, thank you very much. Viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this. Like I say, a very hurried podcast this evening, but addressing some of the issues I think that really are pointing up to the community and setting the forums alight at the moment. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much to JC, Glory and the Magician, and we will hopefully see you on Sunday. Take it easy, guys.